Fire and love, two firefighters, one secret romance, lesbian passion. It began with smoke and sirens, the kind of chaos that defines our lives. We were trained to run toward danger when everyone else ran away, to keep our hearts locked tight behind uniforms and discipline. But the night I looked across the flames and saw her, sweat-streaked, determination burning brighter than the fire itself, I knew something inside me had already changed. We were supposed to be a team, nothing more. Brothers and sisters in arms, risking everything for the city we swore to protect. But every late-night shift, every quiet moment after the blaze, drew us closer to a line we both knew we shouldn't cross. The way her hand brushed mine while we shared a water bottle. The way her eyes lingered in the glow of the fire truck's lights. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, but it did, everything. This is the story of two women who learned that passion doesn't always wait for the right time or the safe place. It's about courage, not just in the face of danger, but in the face of desire. When duty demands silence and the world expects walls, sometimes the heart dares to ignite anyway. Stay until the end, because what happens between us in the firehouse and beyond will test loyalty, risk everything, and prove that even in the hottest flames, love can survive. And if you believe in stories of forbidden love, courage, and desire that refuses to be extinguished, subscribe now, like this video, and turn on notifications, because what burns between two firefighters will leave you breathless. The first time I really noticed her, was in the glow of the firehouse lights after a grueling call. My gear was still heavy on my shoulders, my body drenched in sweat and smoke, but my eyes found her across the truck bay. Emily. She was laughing with one of the guys, tugging her helmet off and shaking loose strands of dark hair that clung to her damp forehead. Her cheeks were streaked with soot, but her smile shone through it, brilliant and alive, like she was carved out of the chaos itself. It hit me hard in a way I didn't want to admit. We'd been working together for months, running drills, charging into burning buildings side by side, sharing late-night coffee in the station kitchen. But that night, something changed. It wasn't just respect for a fellow firefighter anymore. It was something that made my pulse quicken, something that had nothing to do with bravery or teamwork. I tried to shake it off. We were professionals. We were supposed to be family, not lovers. In our world, boundaries were clear. Trust your crew with your life, but keep your heart guarded. And yet, every time Emily glanced my way, every time her hand brushed mine while passing equipment, I felt that boundary weakening. Later that night, after the others had gone to rest, I found myself alone in the common room. The firehouse hummed with the low buzz of the soda machine and the faint creak of settling walls. I was sipping stale coffee, trying to process the image of her smile, when she walked in. "Can't sleep either?" she asked, her voice low, casual. I glanced up, startled. Guess the adrenaline's still in my system. She smirked, dropping onto the couch across from me. She was out of uniform now, in a plain gray t-shirt and sweatpants, her hair tied back loosely. Without the bunker gear, she looked softer, but no less magnetic. "Adrenaline," she repeated, stretching her arms over the back of the couch. Or maybe just too much coffee before the call. I laughed nervously, setting my cup down. That too. Silence settled between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was thick with something unspoken. She tapped her fingers against her knee, then leaned forward. "You handled yourself well tonight," she said, her eyes locking onto mine. "That second floor was a nightmare. You didn't flinch." The compliment hit deeper than it should have. I swallowed hard. "I had you on the hose line. I knew I wasn't alone." Her lips curved into a small smile, softer than the one I'd seen earlier, the kind that felt private, just for me. "You can always count on that." The room felt warmer, heavier, like the embers of the fire we just fought had followed us inside. I wanted to say more, to ask her if she felt it too, that current pulling us closer, but footsteps in the hall broke the spell. One of the guys passed through, yawning, heading for the kitchen. We both leaned back instinctively, the moment retreating into shadows. When he was gone, Emily stood. "Get some sleep," she said, her voice lighter, as if the weight between us hadn't been there at all. But her eyes lingered, holding mine for a second too long before she left. I didn't sleep that night. Days passed, and the tension only grew. Every drill, every shared laugh, every stolen glance chipped away at the walls I had built. It became harder to pretend, harder to convince myself it was just camaraderie. Then came the night everything tipped. We were called to a warehouse fire on the edge of town. The flames were already towering by the time we arrived, thick smoke curling into the sky. I strapped on my gear, adrenaline pumping, but my focus kept slipping to her. Emily pulled her mask on, adjusted her straps, and gave me a quick nod. It wasn't words, but it was enough to steady me. Inside the warehouse, the heat was suffocating. Visibility was low, debris falling around us as we advanced deeper. My heart pounded, not just from the danger, but from knowing she was at my side. We moved as one, a rhythm born of trust. Then the ceiling groaned. "Move!" Emily shouted, just as a beam came crashing down. I stumbled, the weight of my gear dragging me off balance. For a split second, panic shot through me, but her hand gripped my arm, yanking me forward, saving me from being pinned beneath the wreckage. The beam slammed into the ground inches from where I'd been. Our eyes met through the masks, and something raw and electric surged between us. She had just pulled me from the edge, and in that heartbeat, I knew it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about her. We made it out, coughing smoke into the night air. I pulled off my helmet, gasping, and saw her doing the same. She reached for me, her gloved hand gripping my shoulder. "You okay?" she asked, her voice hoarse but urgent. I nodded, unable to speak. My chest ached with more than exhaustion. For a moment, with the fire raging behind us and the chaos of sirens around us, it felt like the world had fallen away. It was just the two of us, standing too close, hearts racing in sync. But then, someone shouted her name, and the spell broke. She stepped back, turning toward the crew, her hand slipping away from my shoulder. I stood frozen, the echo of her touch burning through me. And in that moment, I realized there was no turning back. The warehouse fire stayed with me long after the smoke cleared. It wasn't just the chaos, or the way the heat had nearly suffocated us. It was the moment when Emily's hand had gripped my arm, pulling me to safety. That touch replayed in my mind over and over again, not because it was professional, but because of the way it lingered in my chest like a spark refusing to die. Back at the station, I tried to act normal. We all did. The crew joked, laughed, and made bets about who would cook dinner next week. But when Emily walked in, freshly showered, her hair damp against her neck, I felt my throat tighten. She sat down across from me at the long table, her plate balanced on her knees. She caught me staring and raised her brow. "What?" she asked, a small smirk tugging at her lips. "Nothing," I said too quickly, looking down at my food. But it wasn't nothing. Every time she laughed, my stomach twisted. Every time her arm brushed mine as we reached for the same thing in the kitchen, I felt the air shift. I told myself it was exhaustion, adrenaline, anything but what it really was, attraction. Later that night, I went to the locker room, hoping for some quiet. The place was empty, the fluorescent lights humming above me. I sat on the bench, head in my hands, trying to breathe through the confusion. That's when I heard the door swing open. Emily walked in, holding her phone. "Didn't think anyone was still awake," she said. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, forcing my voice steady. She sat down beside me, close enough that I caught the faint scent of her shampoo. "Me neither." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched, heavy with what I couldn't say. Then she turned to me, her eyes searching. "You scared me today," she said softly. "When that beam came down, I thought I was going to lose you." The words hit me harder than the fire itself. My chest tightened. "You didn't," I managed to say. "You saved me." Her hand brushed mine on the bench, deliberate this time. My breath caught. "Maybe I shouldn't say this," she continued, her voice low, "but when I saw you about to go down, it wasn't just my partner I thought about. It was you." My heart pounded in my ears. I turned toward her, our faces only inches apart. The air between us buzzed like the moment before a lightning strike. "Emily," I started, but the words tangled in my throat. She shook her head, pulling her hand back suddenly, like she'd touched something too hot. "Forget it. Long night. I'm tired." I didn't mean. Yes, you did, I said quickly. The truth slipped out before I could stop it. Her eyes widened, then softened. She stood abruptly, pacing toward the lockers. This is dangerous, she muttered. Not just for us, if anyone found out. I stood too, following her. So we're supposed to pretend it's not there? Pretend I don't feel it every time you look at me? She froze back to me. Slowly, she turned, her expression conflicted but raw. Do you? The question hung between us like smoke. I opened my mouth, then closed it, my pulse hammering. Finally, I nodded. Yes. For a moment, the room seemed to shrink around us. She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving mine. Then we're in more trouble than I thought, she said softly. Her hand rose, like she wanted to touch my face, but she stopped just short. Her fingers hovered in the air, trembling, before she pulled them back with a shaky breath. I can't, she whispered. Before I could answer, the station alarm blared, shrill and demanding. We both jumped, the moment snapping like a rope pulled too tight. The speakers crackled with the dispatcher's voice calling out a car accident downtown. Emily grabbed her gear and ran for the door without looking back. I followed, my body moving on instinct, but my mind stuck in the locker room with her unfinished words. On the truck, we sat side by side, suited up, helmets in our laps. No one else noticed the tension, the electricity pulsing between us. But I felt it in every glance, every second of silence. At the scene, the wreckage was brutal. 2 cars twisted in the middle of the intersection, smoke rising from a crushed hood. We moved fast, pulling people free, stabilizing victims until the paramedics arrived. My focus should have been on the work, but every time I caught sight of Emily, her determined eyes, her hands steady on the injured, I felt that same fire burn hotter. Hours later, back at the station, exhaustion weighed heavy. But as I stripped off my gear, I realized something heavier had taken hold. The way she'd looked at me in the locker room. The way her voice had cracked when she said, "It wasn't just my partner I thought about. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't one-sided. She felt it too. And if she felt it too, then nothing about our lives at the station would ever be the same again." The days after the accident all blurred together. On the surface, nothing had changed. We trained, we ate together, we laughed with the crew like we always had. But underneath, everything was different. Every word Emily spoke felt charged. Every time she brushed past me in the hallway, every glance across the firehouse table, carried a weight neither of us dared name. I tried to bury it, tried to convince myself that what happened in the locker room had been exhaustion, adrenaline, maybe even my imagination. But then I'd catch her staring at me when she thought no one was looking, her lips parted like she wanted to say something she couldn't. One evening, the firehouse was unusually quiet. A summer storm rolled in, thunder low in the distance, rain streaking the windows. Most of the crew had gone home, leaving only a skeleton team for the shift. Emily and I were both on duty, and when I walked into the rec room, she was there alone, sprawled on the couch with a book in her hand. "Hey," she said, glancing up. "Hey." I hesitated, then sat down across from her. The silence was thick, broken only by the rain tapping against the glass. "You ever feel like this job leaves no room for anything else?" she asked suddenly, closing her book. I blinked. "All the time." Her eyes searched mine. "And what if something else does slip in? Something you didn't plan for?" My heart stumbled. I leaned forward, my voice low. "Like what?" Her lips curved into a sad smile. "Like someone you shouldn't want." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. I felt heat rise in my chest. "Emily." She shook her head quickly, her smile turning bitter. "Forget I said anything." But I couldn't. You don't say things like that if you don't mean them. For a long moment, she stared at me, conflict flashing across her face. Then she stood abruptly and walked to the window, arms crossed. Lightning lit her silhouette against the rain. "Do you know what happens if the others find out? This place, it's a family. But families can turn cruel when they don't understand." I rose and moved toward her, stopping just behind. "Maybe they don't have to know." She turned, eyes blazing with something I couldn't quite read, fear, desire, both tangled together. That's the problem. I want them not to know. But I also don't want to hide from you. The words made my chest tighten. I reached out, my fingers brushing her arm. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned closer, her breath warm against my skin. For a second, I thought she'd close the distance between us. But the station alarm shattered the moment, its shrill tone cutting through the storm. We both froze, then moved in sync, grabbing our gear, racing to the truck. The call was a residential fire on the outskirts of town. When we arrived, flames curled through the windows of a two-story house. The family was already outside, shivering under blankets, but the father shouted that the dog was still trapped inside. Without hesitation, Emily volunteered. "I'm with her," I said, grabbing my mask. Inside, the smoke was thick, the heat suffocating. We pushed through the hallway, voices muffled by our masks. In the back bedroom, we found the dog, a golden retriever, whimpering under the bed. Emily coaxed it out, lifting it into her arms, her movements steady despite the chaos. We turned to leave, but the ceiling groaned. "Move!" I shouted, and a moment later the roof caved, sending debris crashing down. A beam struck the floor between us, splitting the room in half. Smoke filled the gap, swallowing her figure. "Emily!" I screamed, lunging forward. Her voice came back, muffled but urgent. "Go! Get out!" "No way!" I shoved at the beam, my muscles screaming. It wouldn't budge. I clawed through debris, desperate, until finally I saw her hand through the smoke, reaching, trembling. Without thinking, I grabbed it. Her fingers tightened around mine, fierce, desperate, alive. And in that moment, with smoke searing my lungs and fire licking the walls, I knew it wasn't just partnership driving me, it was love. The others broke through from behind, hauling the beam aside, dragging us both out into the night air. We collapsed on the lawn, coughing, gasping. The dog barked weakly, alive in Emily's arms. She turned to me, soot streaking her face, her eyes wide and raw. "You didn't let go," she rasped. "Never," I said, the word cracking in my throat. Our crew surrounded us, clapping our backs, praising the save, too distracted to notice the way her hand lingered in mine even after the danger had passed. But when the chaos calmed, when the fire was under control and the adrenaline faded, Emily pulled her hand away. She stood, looking down at me with eyes full of everything she couldn't say. Then, in a voice meant only for me, she whispered, "This has to stop, or it will destroy us." And she walked away, leaving me on the grass with smoke still curling in the air and my heart breaking under the weight of her words. I couldn't get her words out of my head. This has to stop, or it will destroy us. But how do you stop something that already lives under your skin, something that burns hotter than any fire we face? For the next few days, Emily avoided me. Not completely, after all, the firehouse isn't big, but enough that I felt the absence like a wound. She sat at the far end of the table during meals, paired with other partners during drills, ducked out of rooms the moment I walked in. To the others, it looked normal. To me, it was suffocating. Then came the call that changed everything. It was just past midnight when the alarm jolted us awake. A fire had broken out in an apartment complex downtown. The dispatcher's voice was urgent. Multiple floors affected, people possibly trapped. We raced through the rain-slicked streets, sirens cutting the night open. My heart pounded, not just from the gravity of the call, but from knowing Emily and I would have no choice but to work side by side again. When we arrived, the scene was chaos. Smoke poured from broken windows, families huddled on the sidewalk, fire curling up the brick walls like claws. The captain barked orders, sending teams inside. Emily and I were paired together, of course. I saw her jaw tighten beneath her mask, but she didn't argue. Inside, the air was thick, oppressive. We moved through the narrow hallways, flames licking along the ceiling, searching for anyone left behind. On the third floor, we heard it, a faint cry. "Over here!" Emily shouted, charging into a smoke-filled apartment. I followed, my eyes burning. Huddled in the corner was a young girl, no more than 6, clutching a stuffed rabbit. She was terrified, frozen in place. Emily crouched, pulling off her mask just long enough to show the girl her face, speaking gently. It's okay, sweetheart. We've got you. We're going to take you outside. The child nodded, wide-eyed, and Emily scooped her up. I covered them both as we moved back into the hall, but the building groaned above us, plaster and wood raining down. Go! I urged, and Emily pushed forward, carrying the girl tightly. We reached the stairwell just as part of the ceiling gave way behind us, cutting off our path back. Smoke thickened, the fire snarling like it wanted us trapped. My lungs screamed, my body shaking from the heat. We pushed downward, step by step, until we burst into the cool night air. The crowd cheered as Emily handed the girl to her sobbing parents. The relief on their faces was almost holy. But even as I pulled off my mask, gasping for clean air, I saw something in Emily's eyes, something fierce, unguarded. She looked at me like she wanted to speak, like the weight she'd been carrying was ready to break. Before she could, the captain stormed over, furious. "What the hell were you thinking?" he barked. "You too disobeyed the safety order. That part of the building was compromised." Emily stiffened. "We hurt a child. And you risked your lives against protocol," the captain snapped. "This isn't about heroics, it's about following orders. Both of you, in my office tomorrow morning." The reprimand hit harder than the smoke in my lungs. But even as my stomach twisted, Emily turned back to me, her face pale. Later, back at the firehouse, the crew buzzed about the save, congratulating us despite the captain's fury. But I couldn't stop thinking about the way Emily had looked at me outside, like the fire inside her had nothing to do with the flames we'd fought. I found her sitting alone in the locker room, her head in her hands. I closed the door quietly and sat beside her. "You okay?" I asked. She shook her head. "We could have died tonight. And all I could think about—" She stopped, her voice cracking. "All you could think about was what?" I pressed, my chest aching. Her eyes met mine, raw and vulnerable. "You." The word hit me like a blow. For a moment, neither of us breathed. "I can't keep pushing you away," she continued, her voice trembling. "Every time we're out there, every time something goes wrong, I realize how much it would destroy me to lose you. And that terrifies me." I reached for her hand, this time without hesitation. "Emily, you don't have to be afraid. Not with me." She squeezed my hand back, her eyes shining. "But if anyone finds out, then we face it," I said firmly. "Together." Her lips parted, like she wanted to believe it. She leaned closer, her forehead brushing mine, her breath warm against my skin. I thought, finally, this was it, the moment the walls came down. But the door banged open. One of the crew stood there, wide-eyed, taking in the scene, Emily and I too close, hands entwined, the air thick with something undeniable. He froze, and so did we. The silence that followed was louder than any alarm. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving Emily and me frozen in the locker room, our hands still tangled together. The silence that followed felt heavier than any fire I'd ever walked into. "Did he see?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Emily pulled her hand back, pacing like the floor beneath her was burning. "Of course he saw. God, what have we done?" I stood, heart pounding. "We didn't do anything wrong." She spun toward me, eyes flashing with panic and something deeper. "Yes, we did. We broke the one rule we swore we wouldn't. We let it show." Her words cut, but not because they weren't true, because I could see the fear behind them. I stepped closer, refusing to let her retreat into shame. "Emily, look at me." She stopped, her chest heaving. "I'm not sorry," I said, my voice firm despite the quake in my chest. "Not for this. Not for us. I'd walk into 100 burning buildings if it meant one more chance to feel what I felt when you took my hand tonight." Her lips trembled, and for a moment I thought she would crumble. But then the door burst open again. The same firefighter who had caught us stood there, awkward and hesitant. "I didn't see anything," he muttered. "And I don't plan to. You two saved that girl tonight. That's what matters. Just be careful." And then he was gone. Emily blinked, stunned. Relief and disbelief tangled in her expression. "He's not going to say anything?" "Looks like he knows what really counts," I said softly. She sat down heavily, covering her face with her hands. I don't know if I can keep hiding. I don't know if I want to. I crouched in front of her, gently pulling her hands away. Then don't. We've risked our lives for strangers without thinking twice. Why are we so scared to risk telling the truth about us? Her eyes met mine, raw and searching. Because what if we lose everything? Or, I countered, we finally gain something worth everything. The storm outside had calmed by then, leaving the firehouse wrapped in stillness. Emily reached up, her fingers brushing my cheek, hesitant but sure. You make it sound so simple. Because it is, I said, leaning closer. I love you. And that's the only truth that matters. For a heartbeat, the world held still. Then she kissed me. It wasn't tentative this time. It was desperate and certain, filled with all the words we'd swallowed for weeks. Her hands gripped my shoulders, mine pulling her closer, the taste of salt and smoke still lingering between us. When we finally broke apart, breathless, she laughed, a shaky, disbelieving laugh that cracked open something in both of us. I can't believe this is real. It's real, I whispered. And we don't have to run from it anymore. The next morning, we sat across from the captain in his office, braced for reprimand. He scolded us for the risk we'd taken at the fire, but never mentioned what he might have suspected. We walked out with nothing more than a warning about protocol. As we stepped back into the hallway, Emily caught my hand, squeezing it briefly before letting go. No one else noticed. But for us, it was a promise. Whatever storms came, we'd face them together. Weeks later, the memory of that night still burned bright, not with fear, but with certainty. We worked side by side, saved lives, carried scars, and held a secret that no flame could touch. Maybe one day the world would see it, maybe not. But in the end it didn't matter. Because love, I realized, is the bravest act of all. And if you've followed this story until now, ask yourself this. What truths are you hiding out of fear? What fire inside you are you too afraid to let the world see? Sometimes, the greatest rescue is saving yourself from silence. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. Because love, real, undeniable love, deserves to be seen even when it's found in the most unexpected places.